So one of the hopes of the Jamestown colony and its establishment by the Virginia Company was to have a profitable source of revenue. So they were looking for a passage to the western seas to be able to make it through either to the Indies or to just gain gold from the land that they were colonizing. So they actually were sending over glass workers and gem workers and goldsmiths and people who would take care of precious things and weren't willing to do the hard labor needed to have a successful colony. And John Smith had the foresight to see that that was not going to be a long-term successful colony, especially when they didn't have any gold in Virginia. So he instead asked for them to send out, he wanted them to send farmers and carpenters and people that would actually do the hard work of the colony, fishermen and diggers that would just get the job done and do it, doing the hard work that was necessary for a successful colony. And then there were others among them that were of the gentry, and they thought themselves too good to do the menial task of hard labor. But when John Smith was president, he instituted the biblical principle that if you will not work, you will not eat. And so his leadership there was successful, or led to the successful end of the colony because they took those necessary actions to do that. Right, so when we consider what made Jamestown and then subsequently America profitable and productive, it was capitalism. And capitalism is the application of biblical faith to economics, to the area and sphere of economic work. This came directly out of the Reformation in a new zeal that had not been seen before on the earth, the creation of wealth in the lower and middle classes, beyond just the powerful lords or manors or those who were conquered vast realms and then accrued all that money to themselves. The Reformation moved the monetary thrust of a civilization into the common people. And that's what made Jamestown so productive. You had men like John Rolfe who were able to be enterprising and took the resources around them, tobacco, which was a product of the New World, not delivered, but derive specific and new strains of it that were hardy for the Virginia climate. And
developed them, that's what you're thinking.
Developed them, to be hardy for the Virginia climate.
Yep.
And that was able to provide Virginia's primary export. And Virginia was the leader of tobacco export from the New World for almost 3 centuries. It's a tremendous example of how biblical economics applied results in a thriving success.
Right. So again, economic ideology can't be separated from religion, so we directly see a connection there. Just like every other area of life, and religious philosophy will produce economic philosophy. Getting a little tired, guys. Almost there. So, my screen, hold on, give me a second. My screen timed out. There it is. Fill in for me, Kevin, while I find my spot. Oh, there it is. I found it. Never mind. So, oh yes. So, one of the things that we see now, especially, we could point to lots of economic ills in our time. I'm sure all of you experience them personally or see them around you, and specifically in conservative circles. Capitalism, pure capitalism, is held up as a great good. But capitalism, pure capitalism apart from actual Christian principles, will not produce prosperity like Kevin is describing. So the Christian element has to be there, because the Christian element identifies that ultimately wealth doesn't go to me. It is produced for ultimately the glory of God, and because of that it goes to others, it builds up civilization, and it ultimately produces wealth for the next generation. So if you don't have the worship of God behind your economic system, even if it's a capitalist system, you're still not going to produce true wealth or benefit to others. It still has a pernicious aspect to it, and it will not be beneficial to the people that are experiencing it. The other thing I wanted to mention is that greed has no place in a Christian concept of wealth. So this is the problem that Christians many times have with gaining wealth. We associate it with greed, the love of money is the root of evil. Money itself is meant as actually owed to God. So the mindset must be we owe all things to God, not just some of it, all of it, and that we owe fruit to God, which means that Christians are required to build wealth, but not for the reasons that we would like to. So it's a little bit lazy and easy to say, oh, well, just don't acquire wealth because then you won't have to deal with greed. That's not quite how it works. We can be either greedy poor people, greedy rich people, or eschew greed and embrace building wealth for the glory of God to advance His kingdom and establish the next generation. And we're going to see the fruit of that tomorrow especially. So stay tuned tomorrow for that whole discussion of what it looks like.
Okay, and just really quick, finishing up, I'm right in front of a little blacksmith area. They have all sorts of cool extra things here.
It's probably fun
Jamestown.
doing demonstrations
Ellie's
here.
still sleeping. And the kids are climbing on trees. I just wanted to talk about one of the ways that we can sometimes apply this discontentment with our calling. Just as the men in Jamestown, Kurtis was talking about how they sent goldsmiths because they just wanted gold. They wanted to get rich quick, and they didn't want to send the farmers. And they eventually sent it to the farmers. And Kevin talked about tobacco. And I think one of the ways that we can sometimes do this is we can romanticize certain callings. And one of the ways we're doing that right now is with the cottagecore trend. After the pandemic, everybody was staying home. And there started to be this mentality sometimes that if we just had a homestead, we just had the perfect setting, and all our problems would be solved. And really, God has called us to diverse callings. And we need blacksmiths, we need farmers, we need goldsmiths, we need people who will write books, and people who will govern. And we really shouldn't be romanticizing one calling above the other as if that will save us from unpleasantness. And the early Puritans really had this down, and the early Americans too. And this is kind of getting into the future of America just a little bit, but if you want to dive into that more, read Cotton Mather's A Christian's Calling. Also, when a settler went to America, if they were going to fund themselves, they needed 2 years. So this idea that if we can just, set up our own little settlement, they needed 2 years of income. Sorry, didn't finish my sentence there. So yeah, it was a huge undertaking, not a romantic undertaking, or they were indentured servants and they were funded. So I don't know, just a call to be content with the calling that God is giving you. So now we're going to talk about family and culture next, and then we're done for today, and tune in again tomorrow. Let you finish it off there, Kat.